There, my name is Heather Feather. I am the owner of Rare Bird Medicine, and today's topic is the path to womanhood. If you've been catching my drift through these recent videos of the path to the father, the path to manhood, the path to the mother, one of the things I'm elucidating is what is your mother story? And the path to the mother, I told you my mother story. What is your mother story? What is your father's story? I've said many times I'm not a YOLOer. If you don't know what that term means, it means you only live once. I grew up in Texas, and there's a lot of Christianity there, and there are definitely YOLO groups and things like that. So it's a more common term from that area, perhaps. But YOLO means you only live once, and I am not a YOLOer. I do not think you live once. I think you live many, many lifetimes, and I don't think that time is real. I'm only ever here now. I can't escape out of it. No two-legged is ever anywhere other than here and now, although the mind has a penchant for wondering about the cabin. I actually think that we do have multilocality. I think we inhabit multiple bodies at once. You can always read Oversoul 7 by Jane Roberts if you want to understand that concept a little deeper of being an oversoul that oversees you in multiple incarnations, meaning multiple cultures, multiple genders all at one time. We are not these clay sacks, although we play the role, right? We take up a flesh costume and we play a role. We play these specific labels and then get real addicted to them. And then have all kinds of arguments with one another about it. So when we're talking about the path to womanhood, one of the things that we want to flush up in the feminine principle and the mothering principle and the womanhood principle, which all two-leggeds hold because we have an Ida. An Ida is a 3.5 coiled turned snake at the base of Muladhara, the root chakra on the left side. It has a lunar energy. It is cold or cooling. It is soothing. It is receptive. It is gentle. It is not aggressive. It is white in color, right? And so one of the things we consider when we're considering our womanhood, one of the things we can reflect upon is the root of that. What was your mother's story? Right? If you're not a YOLOer and you believe that you've lived many lifetimes, you very actively and very determinedly, with your free will choice on the other side, we don't just get free will here, we get it on the other side, you chose a specific set of parents. And you chose a specific set of parents that would identically mirror a representation of how you're doing with the feminine and masculine principle. So what is the mother story that you tell, right? The father principle story that I came with is my father drowned when I was 17 months old and he was never found, right? And so there's a component of the masculine principle of doing and getting it done and strategizing and having boundaries and understanding when the answer is no instead of yes and things of that nature would be less developed than my receptivity, my tendency to nurture, my tendency to, right? Because there's an absentee in the masculine principle. I was blessed with my mother for 24 years. So clearly I had a different story around the feminine principle, that I had more developed empathy, more developed emotional intelligence, more developed psychic capacity, more developed ability to nurture. Doesn't mean neither story necessarily means we're in perfect balance. If you're in a flesh costume, you're still working on balance as a whole. But let's consider for a moment your mother's story to consider your path to womanhood. What is the story there? Is there an absenteeness to it? Was there a devoidness of it? Was she narcissistic? Was she, selfish, myopic, disconnected, deceased? So then we start to look at through that root mirror story. Everything is just stories down here. There's only unified love. Everything else is just stories we tell while we play the game of separation, which isn't actually an option for divinity. But while we're pretending that game of separation, when you look at your mother's story, how are you doing? What was the storyline your soul chose to represent as a mirror where you are on the developed feminine principle in life? And how are you doing with your receptivity? We can get into toxic femininity in several different ways. One of the ways we can have toxic femininity present in our life is by being constantly receptive, constantly taking in, constantly pressuring ourselves to nurture whatever we take in, to be a caretaker, to be a steward, to be loving, to be tender, to be kind, to be sensitive, because Mother feminine female principle not only represents our clay costumes, but it also represents our emotions. So it represents a component of being compassionate and being at the heart of the matter, which is I am you and you are me. Let me be sensitive and care for you in the living tree. And when we have toxic femininity, we don't even recognize that when we stop nurturing ourselves by choosing to nurture those that are toxic to us, our capacity to receive, our capacity to serve, our capacity to nurture is in a toxic state. You can also have an imbalanced or unhealthy feminine principle in not being able to receive. I know men, women, and theys that, and I've seen myself even do it too, where we have a moment where I'm actually usually a pretty generous listener, but I have moments too where it's like, literally can't take in data right now, no thank you. Like my brain just goes, delete file, like, because I demand a lot of my attention. And so there are times if I try to watch a story on TV, I have to keep rewinding a scene over and over because I literally cannot receive data. I cannot receive. The cup is wicked full of stuff it keeps receiving as an over-nurture and as a deeply receptive, deeply psychic woman with a better developed feminine principle. So, one of the ways toxic femininity can show up as well can be being out of balance with receiving, right? Where you are not receiving the self, right? You're receiving only outward, and you're not receiving the self. And sometimes we can't even receive, we can't even listen, we can't even take in the world. So we get to such a state of overwhelm from too much receptivity in the life that we get to a place where we're bleary-eyed when we try to receive and we just can't. We're just like, I can't take this in. I don't even know. So today I want you to consider, how are you doing in your feminine principle? I'm not talking about your genitals, I continue to marvel at what a genitalia obsessed realm this is. Such a paltry sum of what makes up. The flesh costume in and of itself is such a paltry sum of what makes you you. And I've said that for a long time. When it comes to relationship and romance, your attractiveness, your physical form is the least of the things you can hand me. How's your mind? How's your heart? How's your spirit? Let's look at those first. You know what I mean? As far as your body and your looks, so what? That's the last on the list. They're subject to change all the time anyhow, and we'll all rot off the bone, right? We're very obsessed with physical form in this world. And I think that is part of these clay costumes and the feminine principle. We are given this clay, and then there's this fundamental expectation that we should mold it to look like XYZ magazine, television show, XYZ representative of how a two-legged should look. We have very narrow definitions of beauty, and I don't think that's true on an individual level. I think it's true on a marketing level. I think they're working on it, but a little late in the game. A little late in the game. Beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, heights. Beauty to me is everywhere I look, because I don't look into an arboretum or a garden of all these infinite flowers and go, these 12 flowers are gross. They're too tall, too short, too big, too small, I don't do that. And when I look at the garden of life of people's clay costumes, I receive them completely as they are, and I love them as they are. Sometimes people misreceive me because I'm able to love what I look upon and love life. And it doesn't mean I want anything from you, or I need anything from you, or that I'm attracted to you, or that I want to hit on you. I have experienced a lot of energy in this life where people, they think I'm something. I don't know. They think I want something, or I'm attracted, but I just tend to look at life and marvel at the garden and the beauty of life. And I can see the beauty in any two-legged, irrespective of their age, their shape, their culture, their size, their identification, their labels, whether they agree with my labels. I marvel at the beauty of the diversity of life. My aim is much like my mother's, to celebrate the diversity of life, And so, how are you doing with the way you receive and assess other people's bodies? I've heard a lot of two-leggeds be like, I'm only attracted to this type of, they have this little box, I've just made a little box of beauty, and I'm only attracted to this kind of two-legged. It's got to be this culture, this hairstyle, this hair color, this eye color. They got to wear this type of outfit. They got to listen to this kind of music. And it's like, I wish you luck in your union and friendships and whatever it is you seek. I definitely don't have those parameters. I kind of consider the world my friend. I've never sought friends or really wanted friendship because I consider every interaction a friendly interaction to the best of my ability. May I be present and loving and blessing and praying and honoring those that I engage with as my mirrors of the divine essence of light. But how are you doing with the way you receive the clay costume, your clay costume? How do you talk to your clay costume? How are you receiving your clay costume? Are you judging it? You know, I live a pretty disciplined life. I've always been a very disciplined woman. I naturally am disciplined, and it is a well-developed skill in me. And one of the ways I remain disciplined is I allow myself rebellion throughout the year. This weekend, I was super rebellious. I had all kinds of stuff. I had a calzone. I had a freaking apple fritter. I had gluten. I had sugar. I had all kinds of things that I don't bring into my house and I don't have available. For Heather Feather, if I want to have sweets, I usually have fruit. Frozen blueberries actually can release additional components that serve the wellness of the body, even to a higher level than a fresh blueberry. So I might have frozen blueberries, which I do, for example, in my freezer. And if I get a sweet tooth, that's the only option I have. If Heather wants sugar, she's got to go out and buy it. I don't allow sugar in my house because I freaking love it. I'd eat it I'm like a hummingbird, right? So one of the ways I steward and care for my clay costume is I live a very disciplined life in the way that I eat, and I eat very pure, organic, natural, true, healthy foods, whole foods that come out of the earth. And I allow myself to rebel and experience life because I'm going to rot off the bone or turn to ash. Turn to ash, I already know, but I'm going to turn to ash one day. So let's let my inner child enjoy the occasional ice cream cone or the occasional, And this month I've had a lot more rebellion. I was being really super disciplined, like hardcore disciplined, and doing my cycles of what I do. Eat really disciplined, do a fast or cleanse to detox the body, eat really disciplined, do my disciplines in the morning. And this past month is a month in which another friend exited flesh costume. And I notice when death, even though it's always around me, is present, I get rebellious. And the place that I get rebellious is the feminine principle. And my mother is somebody who struggled with food her entire life. Her husband was lost in the Brazos River and she never found him again and had to raise 3 kids on her own. And she constantly struggled with dieting and foods. And so she would work all the time and eat foods, right? And one of the things, although I've absorbed some of the loveliest, most beautiful qualities in the world from my mother, one of the things I absorbed from her is being a workaholic and sometimes having a battle with myself around food. So do you battle with yourself? Do you battle with your body? Here's an idea. What if you were to stop doing that forever? What if you were to decide, like this weekend I decided I'm being rebellious. I'm being rebellious because, I get frustrated that the constant theme of my life is death. And okay, I just was like, okay, well, I'm not going to feel bad about it or guilty or shameful because we already know the pendulum in my life will swing back to discipline. And if the pendulum in your life doesn't swing towards discipline, then okay, you may have toxic femininity because toxic femininity is also slow, calm, soothing. It's not active and dynamic. So if you describe yourself as lazy, that could be just too much feminine principle. You're just too busy receiving, which is more of a still component. And so you might want to choose things that activate and motivate, whether that be apps or specific things like ginseng or, more fire elemental. Through pain, we're able to gain pleasure, right? So through the pain of exercise, which is masculine discipline, we can receive the pleasure of endorphins and self-respect for following a discipline, let's say. So how are you doing with your body and the bodies of others? Are you judging the bodies of others? Why are you doing that? What makes you so superior in your flesh costumery? And another ask is how are you doing in general with your heart? Do you receive your heart? Do you listen to your heart? Your heart is always telling you how something feels. So when I ask you how you're doing with your womanhood, how are you doing with honoring the heart of the matter? The heart is a very quick, receptive organ to tell you, doesn't feel good, don't like it, make a new choice, please. You know what I mean? Hey, free will chooser, that doesn't feel good, please choose again. We've got Egyptian Shamanism coming up August 9th. You can go to rarebirdmedicine.com and click on the classes link. I'd love to have you join us. You can always subscribe and like or comment on YouTube. I'm Woon.